All
Not a
right.
share.
Hello, and welcome to this month's amazing lineup on the Her Version Impact panel. We are back again. We have had over 130 female guest speakers on our stage up to this point. We have over 485 YouTube videos, over 115 audio podcasts, and over 585 members in our Facebook group. So please join us. I remember the very first, actually these used to be called round tables, and I think we literally had like 27 people in our Facebook group. So we have come such a long way in just over a year. So I'm so excited to see the growth and to see the expansion. I am thrilled to have a female panel here today, filled this month, as we talk about power, we talk about voice, confidence, and what empowerment means in the female community. This conversation around this topic will be broad and will guarantee to educate you on so many questions you might have. Join us as we dive deep into these ladies' personal journeys and what they have done to create a vibrant spirit and build their own courage. There will be live QA for the next 2 hours. So any questions, any comments might come up on stage for these ladies to be able to see and answer. What else? For those of you that don't know me, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, comment, and share. Let's jump right in. Get ready to listen into one of the most powerful and social impact panels we have had to date, accepting women's viewpoints, all while allowing them to become educated and spread awareness about issues that surround them is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to women's empowerment and the movement it has made over the last decade. As women, we recognize the disconnect between who our grandmothers were and who our daughters will be. We are doing our best to close that gap through educating the masses on where we stand mentally, emotionally, and morally as we sit here today. I believe wholeheartedly that it only through
Mentally, emotionally,
somebody
and
doesn't
morally.
have there. Okay, sorry. Making a dent in and thinking of the modern man and speaking up about what we need and what we want in order to continue to help mankind press forward. The knowledge, empathy, and business sense we bring to the table is unmatched in ways that only we can showcase. It is time to listen up. It is time to speak up. It is time to ask questions. It is time to pivot. Let me introduce you to this beautiful panel of ladies. Welcome. How is everyone doing today? Can I get a finger snap? Sorry about that mess up there. We had somebody not on mute, so I just muted everybody. So everyone should be muted right now. So I am going to have each of you introduce yourself before we get started, just so that everyone that's already jumping on live, all 72 of you, are able to know who you're talking to and who is on this panel right now today. So I'm going to start with Jen, and I'm just going to ask a simple question. What is the question? The question is who you are, where you are from, what you do, and why you have decided to speak on this subject. So Jen, if you want to unmute yourself and jump in.
Good morning. As I immediately put my hand out because Chauncey, my dog, decided to run up right as you asked me to come off mute. So my name is Jen. A dog you might hear is Chauncey. I am from Central Oregon. At least that's where I live right now, originally from the East Coast. But what I do and why this subject, I am a mindset and empowerment coach and a huge advocate for women. I absolutely love this topic. I love coaching around this topic, and I'm just really excited to be here today to share this space with you. Hopefully I've done enough of these impact panels to know that there will be some amazing takeaways and tips that we will not only share for you, but I always learn something as well. So yeah, sorry, I was really distracted by my dog. So Jen Massey, owner of Conchi Coaching from Central Oregon, certified mindset empowerment coach, and just super excited to be here.
Thank you, Jen. So awesome to have you here. Lisa McCourt.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lisa McCourt down here in sunny South Florida. I am a joy trainer, podcaster, million-selling author. I have an online joy school that consists of small groups that I guide weekly in vibration elevation together. And I love this topic because I feel like the whole idea of power and empowerment, there's a lot of murkiness around what that means and should mean and could mean. So I love the opportunity to talk about it. I love the opportunity to meet people like y'all. So looking forward to the morning.
Yes, thank you. Hind, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why this subject.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be with you again, Sabrina, and to meet all the amazing ladies you always put together. So it's just so impactful and so amazing to be around. My name is Dr. Hind. I am connecting today from Morocco. And it's such a joy to speak a subject that is in our hearts throughout the world for every woman. It's how to empower them, how to help them create wealth, to make an impact and feel fulfilled. I spent 20 years working on strategies, corporates, finance, and development. And this past 2 years, I'm totally dedicated to helping women power up by becoming more confident, more resilient, tech savvy, financially free, and feeling safe to create and to prosper. So it's just beautiful to be with you today.
Thank you, Hind. Thank you. I appreciate that. Elizabeth, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why this subject.
I am a salsa dancer and a husky mom. And I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I live in DC. And what I do, I am a brand doula and tech witch. What that means is I actually use your birth chart to create your visual brand, and then I also help you choose what software to use for all of your various and sundry platforms, all of the tech pieces. And I have a huge passion for working with spiritually oriented female entrepreneurs to get them and their voice and the information and the passion on their heart out on the internet and onto the world stage. So this subject is like very near and dear to my heart because it's what I try to do in my business every day.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. Maureen, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why this subject.
Hello, ladies. I am Maureen Scanlon. I am a certified life coach, relationship expert of Maureen Scanlon Life Coaching. I base my coachings on learning how to be your own BFF and getting in alignment with the three selves: self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-image. If they are not all in alignment, we can't be our best selves. My fellow dog lovers, love you to pieces. I wrote 2 books. One's My Dog is More Enlightened Than I Am, and My Dog is My Relationship Coach. So love the husky mom. And Chauncey, thank you for coming and watching today. I'm happy to have Chauncey here. I love these panels. I love Sabrina. I love the energy. And I was talking to Jen before we started, and I said, isn't it cool that the vibration of women in this empowerment space, we're all just a one step level happier than our counterparts that are stuck in the places that they don't want to be. And that's why I had to join this one today, because I lived a life, half of my life, the first half, in a lot of misery and not knowing what my power was. So again, I always get so much from these panels, and I'm super happy to be here, and I'm gonna ramble quite a bit, and you guys can always mute me. So anyway, love you all.
And lastly, Miss Tessa, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why this subject.
Hi, well, I'm Tessa van Keken. I'm a inner leadership mentor. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm also living in the Netherlands again, but it still always feels weird to say it because I lived 15 years in Ireland. So I still also feel a little bit from Ireland. I mainly work with women, mainly, but men as well, around those who serve others to also not neglect their own needs and to really kind of broaden their perspective so they can really feel more aligned with their true purpose and stay also fulfilled and not feel that they're kind of getting drained from doing the support, giving the support they want to give. And this subject is very dear to my heart. I'm also the board member, the chair actually of a charity called the Ready for Female Leadership Foundation. And together with 28 authors, we wrote a book, male and female authors, by the way, around Ready for Female Leadership and about creating, and especially also the feminine. So not just women, that is, but still also to really have that feminine qualities to get more attention for that, the importance of both men and women having that more in leadership.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for everyone being here. I so appreciate each and every one of you. For those of you that are listening live and have already jumped on, we so appreciate you being here. For those of you that are just getting to this point and you're watching on the replay, I can guarantee you that this is going to be an awesome panel for you to listen all the way through. We're going to be on for 2 hours. So we're 9 o'clock Eastern to 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern, and we appreciate all of you being here and supporting us. We are doing live QA, so make sure to put your comments and questions up wherever you are listening, and I may bring them on screen for everybody to read. This is interactive. I already said that. I would love to start out with handing the floor over to Jen. Jen, can you please reintroduce yourself and ask your question? We are going to get going.
Good morning again. My name is Jen Massey. My husband did just take Chauncey for a walk, so hopefully we'll have a little bit of quiet because my dog does not know how to let either of us sleep in. If one of us wakes up, the other one wakes up. Owner of Conchi Coaching, mindset and empowerment coach, and energy leadership coach, which is all about leading with your energy and moving out of a stress reaction, which is so important for women's empowerment. And something that I would love to ask all of you, because I've been on these panels before and I know we can get really deep into conversation quickly, which often leaves one or two of us talking in the beginning and then everyone else chiming in at the end. So what I would love to do right off the bat is just do a roundtable of what is your number one tip, action, or takeaway that you want people to leave here with. So what is like your favorite women's empowerment tip, your must-do action, whatever it is. I would love to just go around the horn, and I actually would like to start with Kat because I think we missed your introduction. So Kat, can you please introduce yourself? Take as much time as you need real quick. Introduce yourself so we can all get to know you, and then start with your tip, and then we'll hit everybody else.
Jen, you're the best. I love it when we take charge.
Take charge.
That was awesome. What a segue. You're the best. Yes, go ahead.
This is support of women in action, seriously, when we all see each other. So I wanted to thank you both, Sabrina and Jen. I can't imagine how hard it is to keep everything that you need to do in mind, Sabrina. So thank you both for teaming up. I'm Nia Domska. I'm originally half Polish, half Lebanese. I grew up all over the world. And I started my life out as an engineer and a scientist in a very male-dominated space. And I found that I had very different reactions than I thought I would. I thought I was strong and I thought I was smart. And so I could handle being in a space like that. But I found that my reactions would tend to be leaning much more towards being agreeable and collaborative and accepting rather than fighting back for my own opinions. And I thought that was so interesting for somebody who perceived themselves as being so strong. That really got me into exploring this idea of women's empowerment being very different than men's empowerment, and how women stand up and how we lead and how we show up. So now I run a executive and leadership coaching company called Audacity Activated, and the name says it all. I all think we have some level of audacity or courage in us that is dormant or that we suppress for the sake of collaboration or creating harmony, because I think by nature we like harmony. So this audacity and how it shows up doesn't necessarily need to be grating or aggressive, but it does need to be aligned with our voices and who we are. So I've taken my engineering background, I've taken the creativity coaching certifications I've done, and I've put it together. And what I do is I support women in their well-being to recover from burnout. I help them figure out more clearly their career, their purpose, and what the meaning they're looking for in life is. I help them develop their creative abilities and turn that into entrepreneurship if they desire. And then, of course, lead with emotional intelligence and heart. It's taken me a long time to get here. And because I have two daughters, it's so important for me to teach both my daughters and my son, who's sandwiched in the middle, what it means to be, aligned with who we are and respectful of the life that we have, and to live honoring that, right? So that is my message, Jen. What I would like women or anybody listening to this to leave with is that the way we lead and the way we are empowered doesn't need to look like everybody else's. What it does, though, need to be is it needs to be meaningful personally, and it needs to feel like we are rooted and anchored and aligned with our best selves.
Yeah, I love that so much. Your journey, but also just being willing to stand in your authenticity, and being strong in knowing what your values are, and then standing true to your values and the things that bring you fulfillment. So thank you. I'm just going to go kind of around the way I see the screen. So Tessa, please, what is your one takeaway, action, whatever, for women?
Yeah, I think there's so many things, but that's the one for now, is then that I think especially women who tend to often be there for others and then feel selfish about taking time for themselves. So I think it's really important to remember that by looking after yourself, you are looking after others, that it's not really self-care or care for others, but that the being caring only works if it includes both the other and you. So whether it's that you first need to look at you and from that space look for out for the other, or when you're caring for someone else to then include whatever you need in that, so that it's always both.
I love that. Cannot pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
At all. Elizabeth. Thanks, Tessa.
Awesome. Great question. I think the thing that I would love for people to walk away with is what would your life look like, or how would you be doing things differently if you only ever listened to the first thought you had about anything?
That's good.
Because so often we have a great thought of a burst of inspiration, and then the second we let it marinate, it's a million reasons why that's a stupid idea. It's impractical. How dare you dream that big? So what would it look like if you just listened to the first thought?
Yeah.
I wrote that down. That was good.
Yeah. Huge. There's a concept that I usually talk to that's like holographic thinking, which is head, heart, and gut. And it's so amazing. People are like, well, I don't know what my gut says. Like, well, let's practice that. Because you're right. It's like that initial gut, whether it's like, this doesn't feel right, or because it's trusting.
And then we ignore it.
Like we just ignore it. And then we get into situations where it's like, oh, I want that, but love that so much. Hind. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I want to follow up on what Elizabeth said, because when you listen to your gut, that means you listen to the intuition. And when you hear your intuition, you can create incredible and amazing things. But women don't hear the intuition. it's suffocated. It's just gone. It's just dead. We can't hear it because we have layers of emotions, of frustrations, of luggages, responsibilities, things they didn't do, guilt, and all that stuff we carried from the past. And they're just so heavy. So there is no room to listen to that guidance. And that guidance is inside of us. And that's the first thought. And that the first thought, we don't even hear it. That's why we ignore it, because we don't have the space to let it come inside of us and let it guide us. And that's why, and that also joins what Tessa said, when you take care of yourself, you are able to open that space to let your intuition guide you, to that clear intuition being heard by yourself. And that's the first thing you need to do. So I think my message to every woman is that they have such perfection inside of them. They just need to really trust it, believe in it, believe in their amazing and infinite capacity. If they only trust who they are and what they are, and let go of all the things that has been hurtful. I love Lisa smiling on you. It resonates with you, because that's the confusion often when we don't understand what empowering means. Empowering, it just means giving the women, that authorization slip. You know how you're in a company and somebody gives you the authorization to go out and to do something? It's just she gives herself the authorization of being who she is, of owning her day, of owning her life, of owning her word. And when she does that, she feels so relaxed and so good inside of her. And that's when she can hear her intuition.
I love that so much. I like the authorization slip and the just listening to who you are. I think all of these have been tied together so far. Like from Kat, like knowing who you are authentically, Tessa, not like honoring that and not pulling from an empty cup. Both you and Elizabeth, like giving yourself permission to listen to your intuition. Awesome. Super awesome. Lisa.
Yeah, I was smiling because you express so beautifully what's on your heart, Dr. Hend. I just was like, oh, I love the way we can feel you. We can feel you. And I love that. Thank you. And I love the synchronicity that everyone's talking about intuition, because that's not what we came here to talk about today. But in my Joy School groups, we in the springtime, it's the time for starting something new. So everybody has their own individual seeds that they planted, and we vote and decide on a seed that we're going to plant together. And we're working on strengthening our intuition. So it's just that little bit of confirmation from the universe today that came up from so many of y'all, that like, yeah, it's not about parlor tricks and wanting to know the future. It's about strengthening that connection with our inner knowing, our inner wisdom. And it's being beautifully honored here today. So I love that. So if I were going to say one thing that I would want to maybe impart, I see everything through this filter of joy, this joy lens. So at Joy School, we always look at, why do I want whatever this thing is that I'm claiming to want? So when we say we want more empowerment, it's really, I think, imperative to get crystal clear about how we're defining empowerment, what that's going to look like for us. And, I could talk about that a lot more, but I think, in a nutshell, I think that's the piece that I would say is that it's one thing to just use a word and to really step into it and embody it in a way that's going to bring us joy. We need to be really, really clear about what that word means for us.
Yeah, totally. I use a different method, but the first thing we do is get really clear on success, because you're absolutely right, Lisa. It's one thing to have a goal. It's one thing to say something. It's a whole nother thing to take the time to sit down and define, what does this mean to you? So for everyone listening, to take Lisa's point, it's take time to, in your notebook. And if you don't have a notebook, grab one, because the next 2 hours are going to be fabulous. But yeah, I think we all have one. Like,
I'm a already halfway down.
Note to the audience, everyone that's on live, if your panelists have notebooks, you should probably have a notebook.
Yes.
But take time to write down, what are you hoping to get out of this session today? What does empowerment mean to you? And who is it that you want to become? Because that's all part of this. So Lisa, awesome. Maureen.
Thank you. Geez, we're only a few minutes in and it's already getting good. I need some popcorn. In the middle of empowerment is power. And one thing that I've discovered this week, I had kind of an epiphany, is it's where I see the power. And that's the difference between happy and unhappy, is where do I see the balance of power? Through what lens am I seeing the power? If I see the power with someone else, I feel out of control. I feel anxious. I feel stressed out. If I take that power back and believe I have the power, I now have released somebody else having control over my life. And that comes back to my message, which is always be your own BFF, because everything you have is already there inside of you. And you got to just dig in there and get rid of all of the need for external validation and love. We chase love. We, as women especially, we've always felt like we had to go do something to earn respect, to earn validation, to earn love. Like my action brings me this, not just my being. And that is really the one thing that I've discovered, is that everything we have, if we stop looking outside of ourselves and bring from inside out, we bring that to the world, and we no longer need that validation or giving that power away. So it's just that, take that power back. When I believe I have the power, then my belief turns into action. And that's really what my takeaway for everyone would be today, is just take your power back.
I love that. I love that so much. I literally immediately scribbled that down. I think I would have been finger snapping, cheering immediately. I'm like, whoa, that's good. That's good. Because part of energy leadership is understanding that you have control over your energy. And a question that you can ask yourself is do I want to put my energy towards that? And who has control over my energy? So you just simplified that so well. Where's the power? Is it with me? Is it with someone else? Is that where I want it to be? I have the power to take it back. So many good things. And Sabrina, I want to get yours too, but I'm going to share mine and then I'll just hand it back over to you so you can share yours, and we'll keep moving. But the one, and I think this embodies what everybody was sharing. One thing, I would say my one thing that I'll probably bring up a lot of times today is celebrate yourself. So we all sabotage our behaviors. We all have negative self-talk, and we all belittle who we are and what we do. Anytime somebody gives us a compliment, we immediately belittle it, whether it's on what we're wearing, oh, thanks, I got it on sale. We could stop at, oh, thanks. Thank you. If someone says we do a good job, don't belittle it. Own who you are and celebrate who you are. And the number one way that you can practice that is keeping a journal, keeping a celebration journal where write down one thing every day that you're proud of yourself for. I actually think we talked about this on the last panel because I'm so passionate about this. But it could be anything from showing up today, logging into the session. 2 hours is a long time on a Saturday. So celebrate that you showed up for yourself and that you got something out of this. If you go do something later with your family, celebrate the time that you have to spend with your family. So my one takeaway is practice celebrating yourself, because the easier it is for you to say, I am good at this, I am amazing, the easier it will be for you to accept compliments, the easier it will be for you to build up other women. And that just confidence and authenticity and intuition that we've all been talking about, it just comes with that. So that would be my one takeaway. And Sabrina, before you pass the mic over, you don't usually get to talk a lot on these. So since you were actually on screen for once, I would love to know as our wonderful host, what is your message and takeaway for everyone listening?
So I'm going to bring it back a little in simplicity. Um, everything that everybody said, I want to say, was absolutely fantastic. Really, really hit home with a lot of that. The reason I want to make it a little simpler is, or I guess step one, I'm going to give step one, is because it's important to always recognize that a lot of times people who are listening to this stuff, they're in a place that to jump from where they are now to where we are now is unfathomable. Like, it's not even something that they can necessarily connect. And so I just have one sentence, and I used this before I knew anything about personal development. I used this when I was in a very toxic past relationship, and I started to notice a pattern. And the pattern was, no matter what happened, everything was going to be okay. Just that. And if we can, anytime any sort of anxiety or heart flutter or tense happens in our life, if we can teach ourselves, step one, to remind ourselves that everything is going to be okay, that allows our mind to ease, our heart to slow, so that then we can implement a lot of the examples that was given here on the panel. So for those of you that are at home taking notes, I want you to go all the way to the top of all the stuff that you just wrote down. And step one is just to say one sentence. And the sentence is, everything's going to be okay. And sit in that for just a moment, and then start to implement all of the wonderful things that were shared here after that. Great first question. Thank you, Jen. Great first question, Jen. That was fantastic. I love that you gave the floor to everybody there. So I'm going to move the microphone over to Lisa. If you can share a few sentences about yourself, what you do, and then ask your question.
Hi, darling. Okay. Again, I am Lisa McCourt of Joy School. I have an online Joy School that my groups meet weekly, and we work to raise vibration together. Basically, I'm also a podcaster and author. And as I was mentioning earlier, through this filter of seeing everything through this lens of joy, I like to just sort of unsticky this concept of empowerment, because so much of our culture is positioned toward an idea of power that is really just egoic positioning, right? There are certain attributes of power that we associate that are really just dangling carrots at the end of this long stick that we're perpetually chasing around. It's not going to ever bring us joy. We think more money gives us more power, more physical attractiveness, more attention from others at whatever it is that we're putting ourselves out there doing, more likes, more follows, more clients. All of these are superficial markers of power, but they're the ones we've been taught to judge our worthiness by, judge our power in the world by. And no matter how successful we become, how accomplished or how famous even, there's going to come a day, because we're here in these time-sensitive meat suits, there's going to come a day when all of that starts to decline, right? So I think when we talk about becoming empowered, it's so much more beneficial to recognize what true power is, which is something that we all kind of touched on already. It's that connection with our inner source, our source wisdom, our place where we're all naturally peaceful and compassionate toward ourselves and others 24/7, because that's who we are at our core. And that's really the only form of power that's going to give us any kind of lasting joy. So when we ask that question, why do I want this? The answer is always some version of because I think I'll be happier for having it. So then we need to look at where can I invest my efforts toward more empowerment that will actually bring me joy. And that's what I wanted to throw out there to y'all. I always like to look at where is humanity headed in regard to this issue. I'm an optimist, a meliorist. I do believe we're moving in the direction of a better version of humanity. So I'm wondering what y'all see out there, because clearly the old masculine-based paradigm of power is not moving humanity forward. So what do you think could be done or is happening that could help to shift consciousness toward a healthier understanding of what it means to be truly empowered? Yes. Hi, Jen.
I'm always the one to break the silence. Really deep question given what's going on in the country right now.
So
really
much
deep
power
question.
playing out on that world stage.
Yeah, because right now, I'm sure I'm not the only one, both live or in the audience, that's watching everything happening and thinking, what the heck is happening to women's empowerment today? We are going so backwards. Our voices are being taken away, our rights are being taken away, our freedom of choice is being taken away. So yeah, really deep question. And I appreciate that you're challenging us to kind of step out and think for a second, like, where are we going? What can we do? Which I think is the more powerful aspect of that, because where we're going, nobody knows, but what can we do and what are we seeing? And I personally am loving seeing the younger generations become more active and advocates. And also, as I'm saying this, I'm realizing not everybody is in America. So in America, it's a really tough place right now. Candidly, I don't really know what's going on the world stage with women's rights, but in the US, it's quite tough right now. But I'm loving that I'm seeing more people become active and vocal and truly speaking up for what they deserve. And that comes from knowing your value. And I think that's why conversations like this are so important and building each other up is so important. Because if we step up and use our platforms to say, this is what I want, I know my value, I know my worth, I'm going to advocate for myself. We give other women, other men, other people permission to also advocate for what they believe in. So using social for a good. Using social media for a cause, using social media for a good. I love seeing that. I also love seeing more and more people go to a minimalistic lifestyle, reconnecting with nature. That's something that's so important to me. That's why I personally moved from Philly to Oregon, and why I now lead retreats here in Oregon, because there's just something really powerful about connecting with other people and empowering each other and building each other up and connecting to Mother Earth herself and just kind of being out there and not having the technology and not having the constant stressors bring us down. So I would say seeing people advocate and seeing people step and say, do I really need all of that? And more people are saying, no, I do not need all of that, which is why what you said earlier, like defining what joy looks like, defining what fulfillment looks like. For me, it's define what success, promotion, but don't do that unless you want it. Chase your dreams, chase the things that bring you joy, chase the things that bring you fulfillment, because at the end of the day, that's all you have. So that's where I think we're going, is more people taking a step back and saying, hold up, I have control and I'm going to take control right now and not wait for down the line.
I like that answer. Thank you.
I love that
aspect to it. Maureen?
Thank you. That was great. I love that. And I'm going to sort of piggyback. I was just thinking of like this 4-step thing we could simplify, right? What's the change that's needed in the world? What do we always say? There's that saying, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So 4 steps in my mind as you were speaking, I thought, okay, well, the first step is resonate with something that doesn't feel right, right? There's something that's happening that doesn't feel well for me. It's not serving me. It's not serving others. We're all empaths here, and we wouldn't be in the field that we are if we weren't empaths. So it doesn't feel right. So now I've recognized this thing isn't good. Now what do? Find my voice. I got to speak up about it. I can't sit back and hope everybody else is going to fix it, right? Just like in our own lives, I can complain about everything going on in my life, but who has to fix it? I do. So when we see things that are not going well in the world and among our fellow humans, it's our job to speak up. The next part is providing these safe spaces. Because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, yay. I love that. For me, that's the biggest thing, is letting people have a safe space to come forward, to say, I'm not okay, and I'm struggling with this. Providing these safe spaces to be more vocal about it where we hadn't been before. Everything, my generation as a Gen Xer, everything was just suck it up, buttercup, sweep that under the rug. We don't talk about that stuff. So now we're not doing that. There's no more sweeping, and I'm so happy about that. So having these safe spaces to welcome each other like this. This is a safe space to say, hey, I've been through this. I've done this. What have you done? What pain have you been through? What solutions have you found? And then we have to take action, right? And how do we take action? We gather together and we start being solution-minded rather than problem-focused. And that's pretty much what the, I think, disconnect is. We've got the people in the world who want to complain about it, and we've got the people in the world who want to do something about it. And they're not talking. It's like, can't we just talk about it and be able to view things from the other person's perspective instead of, I'm right, this is what sits with my values. I need to win you over to my beliefs. I need to win you over to what I want. That's where we have this disconnect. That's where how wars start. That's how conflict continues, is sit down together and try to figure out, why do you feel this way? Am I open-minded enough to view it from your point of view? And so I think that's really the shift in humanity. If we stop looking at trying to convince everyone to see things our way and simplify it to, let's just try to see each other's perspective and be open-minded to new things, I think we can continue to improve humanity. Great question, Lisa.
Great answer, Maureen. I loved that. Yeah, no, I think that, we've been taught that the true, that power means having power over someone else, which means for me to be right, you have to be wrong. And a truly empowered person who's living from their source wisdom knows that, everyone can be equally empowered. There's no scarcity of true power in this realm of egoic power that we're conditioned to. Yeah, you have to lose for me to win. But I got to believe we're headed, toward a better understanding of that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
Kat, hi, love.
I just want to add something really quickly about the power dynamic. It brings to mind the underlying themes of relationship, right? Like, we're all in relationship with each other, and relationship experts claim that people fight or people struggle over 3 underlying themes in a relationship. One is power and control, but then the other 2 are closeness and care and respect and recognition. And I think if we continue to have this tug of war over power and control, we're disregarding the other 2. Whereas if we focus more of our efforts on connection and care, on respect and recognition, the amount of energy that's being given to power and control is going to naturally diminish. In the leadership space, we're already seeing this move towards conscious leadership, servant leadership, all of that. And I think there is, if we try and just summarize what's happening, the direction that things are moving in, as Jen was saying earlier, there is a positive shift. We just have to continue to contribute to that by building relationships, by building respect between each other, and by teaching our children and continuing to share that and create that ripple effect around us of empathetic interaction, of recognition and respect of other people's abilities and accomplishments and perspectives and where they stand. And the shift in power will just happen.
Thank you. That's lovely.
I am going to go ahead and take the microphone. Thank you so much, Lisa. I so appreciate you. That was a wonderful question. I am going to go to Dr. Hind. If you can give a rundown of who you are and then ask your question.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. I love how we are moving to a deeper understanding of empowerment together. My name is Dr. Hind. Everybody knows me here, but let me introduce myself to whoever just joined and who is joining us today. So I am been trained as an engineer. I did my PhD at Harvard in sustainable development. So I spent all of my career first at the World Bank on development, on sustainability, then with the Prime Minister, setting up strategies to help countries, to help sectors, and to help creating more economic growth and social development. Then I moved to finance, where I was an entrepreneur. I managed several investment funds. So anyway, I did many leadership positions and responsibilities. And that's why I feel the question now for every.
Oh, did we lose her?
She's coming in from Morocco, so there's bound to be a little bit of. Should we wait? There you are. Go ahead.
I was gone for a second, but I'm back. I'm back. And so, the shift, as you mentioned about the U.S., what's happening in the U.S., what's happening in the world, what's happening in everywhere, what's happening about women in places where, their traditions are still heavy. There are places where girls don't go to school. Can you realize that today 150 million girls are not going to school? 150 millions. So these girls, obviously, they have mother that are not powered up. They have families. They have no sense what power is. And the empowerment in that sphere, in that level, brings something so missing, which is that humanness, that humane part, that helping others. And that's my question, is how do you think we can help the shift from those to a new leadership, to a new way of empowering people by bringing them a humanness into the way they do business, into making them feel to be powerful, and to feel powerful, they need to help. They need to give a hand to someone else. They need to feel they are giving something and making a difference in someone's life. That is the new way of being. This is what the world needs today. It needs everyone to feel that, yes, I love myself. I love the power. I love the wealth. I love everything. But what I love more is to help other. It's to know what's the role that I'm playing, to know that I have a mission so beautiful and so big that it's the money and everything else looks so small compared to that mission of helping the other. So how do you feel that the role of each one of you around this table, and each one of us as a leader on women empowerment and helping women, and being a guide basically to everyone else, can bring that love for helping and for giving to someone else? Who wants to say? Tessa, yes, please.
Yeah, so thank you. That's such a beautiful question. And I think it's important what you're saying, that we talk here about what is going well at the moment, but also the realization that there is still, for a lot of women and young girls, that they don't have that empowerment yet. So I think what you're saying is this, being a guide is not just about teaching other people how to be empowered, but also being a guide in the sense of showing it. And I think especially it's again in countries where maybe a lot of women or young girls are not in a position yet maybe to get direct guidance, you do hear a lot that if they know someone, even if they don't know them directly, that they have seen some examples of someone who has been able to get empowered, either partly by their own development, but also by the support they've been getting, that still, if they in one way or another have that example, that even if they don't have the direct opportunity maybe yet to be in a space that can really help. And I think what's also important there is that sometimes, especially as a full, like, we have our own businesses maybe, and we're doing our own coaching others. And although we share some of our own story, that sometimes we share mainly the successes of what went well. And I think it is really powerful to also share where it didn't go well, where you're really struggling, not just as a means to show how you have now overcome, but also to say that, look, it doesn't come just like that. And also that even if you're most successful, like, I know one of the things I do is, like, at the moment, besides my own business where I guide people who support others to not forget about their own needs, beside that, I'm also now took a job again as a social worker for a while because of other reasons that I needed to do a job as well. But one of the things I always tell people is I got that job because I was struggling, and I'm like, it doesn't matter how much education I have and how much self-development I've done and how much I'm actually, how often I'm helping clients. When something happened to me, I needed support. So I actually went to social work. And then they offered me a job because they thought I could help others too. But I think that's part showing as well, that you can really show people that it's not just a way up, as in that at some point everything will be well. It will always still, life will go like that. So that also people realize that the empowerment is not as if it's just a linear line going up, but that there will be always things. And then if you realize that, then the guidance can also come from, again, that you then see that you need community, that you need, like, even us here, like some of us know each other better than others. And but still, even this being together is empowering, right? Yeah. And then hopefully by sharing this together, whoever may be watching, that may empower them. And if someone later sees the replay, that might be empowering, and so on and so on and so on. So creating that ripple effect as well.
I love this, Tessa. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for pinpointing something so important, which is that when you didn't feel good, you went to do social work. Because what you just said is that when you help someone else, it helps you. You get powered up when you give a hand to someone else. And that's that missing puzzle in this empowerment journey, is that by helping others, you somehow get more power. So you don't even need to go and control things, but just by feeling that you have a role, that makes you powerful. It powers you up. I want to give a voice to Erica. Welcome. We didn't hear who you are, so maybe it's time if you could introduce yourself and tell us about.
Thank you. Well, I am in a coffee shop, so if it's a little loud, you have to let me know because I couldn't hear that. But I am Erica. I'm Erica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. So my name is Erica. I am the co-founder of the Corner Office, and over at the Corner Office, we have adaptable solutions, resources for primary parents. And the reason why we're using the word primary parent is we all know that 98% of those are women. That's just reality of what it is. But it also is not in this day and time. So we want to be very inclusive in who we're talking to. But I have an interesting story. I come here as an author. That's what we're currently working on. I co-authored a book called But That's Not Me, really portraying what domestic violence and abuse is in modern day America and a glimpse of what it's like in the world. I'm not an expert in the worldview, so I just didn't want to touch on that in a really detailed sense. But I did acknowledge that, we really have to start talking about what it looks like right now, not what it looks like on the television screen or even on social media or whatever or even in our past. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I love being here. I apologize for being late today. My son, I also am the mother of 6 children. So my 16-year-old son is getting his first car today. So I am traveling. So that is the whole thing going on. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations. That's amazing. Yes, I would like to, Jen wants to say something. Please, Jen.
So I would love to just hit on something that both you and Tessa both said, and which is about helping and stepping in to guide others. But Tessa, one thing you said is like being willing to share the messy part of our stories. And I think what's so important about that is we always skip over the messy middle, but the messy middle is where the magic happens. So embracing the messy middle and sharing that with other people. But I think what's really part of helping and guiding others, and I think this goes back to what we were all talking about earlier, but sharing our truth, not hiding the messy middle, but also not being afraid to ask for help and not being afraid to show people that you are asking for help. Because we all know as helping professionals, the biggest barrier our clients face is acknowledging to themselves, that they need help, and then overcoming the fear of asking for help because help is often associated with failure. So the fact that we're all out here guiding and supporting, it's showing that it's okay to ask for help. We are all subject matter experts on this. We have come a long way in our journey, but that does not mean that we have it figured out. We are constantly reaching out to other people to ask for help and to navigate tough situations. So I think that's something that both you and Tessa hit on that I just want to make sure is heard by the people tuning in, because please do not be afraid to ask for help. Please do not be afraid to reach out to somebody that you have no idea who they are. Yes, we're all on your screen right now. Reach out to any of us. We would be happy to have a conversation with you. Reach out to other people you see being active in the chat. If what they're saying in like the live feed in the chat is speaking to you, connect with them. One thing I have learned since coming on my own empowerment journey is how supportive women can be if you find the right women. So find women that will build you up, ask for their help, and hold them very tightly, and continue to hype each other. So that's I just wanted to touch on that. So thank you for a great question.
Very good. So well said. I want to read I need advice on how to handle men in my life that insist I have no power. That's a question of one of the, Sabrina, would you like us to respond to it?
Definitely.
Or,
Yep.
yeah?
Yeah.
Shall I give it a try, or maybe I give a word to Lisa?
You can take it.
Would
We
you like
can
to say a
open it
word
up.
about this? I'll open it up. So when the first thing, we often think that others need to change when we want something to change in our lives, or others need to change the way they talk to us, but the start is actually in you. The first thing you need to change is your self-image, is how you see yourself. If you sit by yourself, like really ignoring everyone, nobody's listening, and you're like, what do I feel about myself? What do I think? Like, do I feel that I have no power? Because if that's the voice you have inside you, you will always attract only that voice and everyone saying that to you. So it's that voice in you that needs to change, because the power in you is infinite. It's so big that as soon as you are just able to connect with it, you will attract the man that will tell you you are the most amazing woman. And so work on that, look at yourself and get some help. And that's what Jen said. There are many ways to help you change your self-image, to change the way you see yourself, and get techniques to boost your confidence, to boost your power in you, and to command respect from everyone. So no one will ever come and tell you and dare to tell you something like that, because you don't attract it in your life. I don't know who else wants to jump and respond to her. Yes, Elizabeth, please.
Elizabeth, can you read the question first for those listening through podcast only?
I need advice on how to handle men in my life that insist that I have no power. And I have a response that's sort of twofold to that. One, piggybacking on what Dr. Hind already said, and that is the notion that like having is evidence of wanting, which can sting a little bit. It's like, well, wait a minute, like I don't want this. But if you look at it through the lens of what about this particular situation is serving me, and address that, because maybe there's some element of not having power that is keeping you comfortable and that is making life easy. It's not a very comfortable pill to swallow, but it could be what's going on, and it's addressing the self-worth and like making the having the guts to step out on your own. And the flip side of that is find new men. Because there are men out there that are not like that. And you see it. And if you see it, that is evidence that it can be in your life as well. So that's my answer to that. No nonsense.
Anybody else?
Tessa.
Yeah, nice to share one more thing before I have to hop off. Yeah, I think it's actually piggyback on what you've said. So I need advice on how to handle men in my life that insist I have no power. And I think it is that thing, like what happens a lot, if someone tells us something, you said it already as well, Elizabeth, about that self-esteem, right? Your own belief that you have power, and that when that in one way or another is lacking, then we hear other people saying this. So I think it is important to really emphasize that, but to also then the reaction can often be that we want to convince the other that we do, and we're going to do extra our best and showing, and look at me, see, I have it. And but the thing is that if I don't really feel it and I start showing it, then it's no longer congruent with how I feel inside and what I'm showing outside. So I think what can happen sometimes is that someone thinks, but look, I'm showing my confidence, and here I am, take it or leave it. But if you're not feeling it, it's not working. So it has to start within first, and it may take time. So that also to allow yourself that time to actually build that within, so that then it can shine outside instead of putting some sort of mask on that may seem empowered, but isn't really. And the other thing I think it is to be careful. And I think this is something we do when we talk about women empowerment, that there sometimes can be a tendency of then talking about women versus men or men versus women. And I do think it's really important with empowerment that in the end, whatever gender someone is, and this is now men and women, but nowadays there's also people identifying as different genders, that whatever gender you are or whatever gender around, that women empowerment is something that concerns everyone, regardless of gender. And I think when you actually work together with the people in your surrounding, whatever gender they are, then you get true empowerment, rather than making it, we have to empower ourselves against men or anything like that.
Very nice.
Beautiful. I love
Very
it.
good.
I love it. I'm going to go ahead and close up. Thank you, Hind. I appreciate you and everything you bring to the table. I'm going to pass the mic to Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me, Sabrina.
Yeah.
So my question probably was sourced from my stellium and Scorpio that loves to look at the underbelly and ugly side of things. But I think it's important also not only just to look at consider where we're going and what we want the future to look like, but also maybe also because I have my feet very firmly planted on sort of both sides of the conversation, and I tend to encounter a lot of individuals who tend to shut down, like patriarchy, feminism, they're just buzzwords, so on and so forth. So my question is, where or maybe what is your earliest memory of being disempowered, and how has that impacted you in your life?
Earliest memory
of being disempowered. So where do we see the disempowerment? And for me, I think that highlights the necessity for this conversation. And Lisa looks like she's about to jump out of her seat. So I hand the mic over to you, baby.
Only because I was just having this conversation with someone on my podcast, and it really struck me. I think that well, I won't say for all of us, I'm sure some of us have memories that go very far back, but for a lot of people, whatever that first memory is, it's not the first time we've been in that dynamic. We tend to create these dynamics very, very, very early in our lives. I came up in a very strong vibration of shame was the origin of my family history. So I know that this wasn't the first time that I had felt this way, but my first memory was around sports in school, just like gym class, like not even like real sports. And I thought that was so interesting because I went down this road recently with one of my podcast guests. And I think that might be one of the places where this indoctrination starts, to go back to Dr. Hind's, beautiful question. I think that's who we all are at our core. Every one of us comes here embodying that exactly what Dr. Hind was so beautifully expressing, but somehow we get all these layers of misconception about how the world works here. And I know there's this popular consensus that playing sports in childhood is great for kids. It teaches them about winning and losing and teamwork. And I do not agree. The more I've looked into this with people, it just teaches them that for this group of kids to have power, the winners, it means that there has to be this whole other group of kids who don't. Those are the losers. They don't get to have any power that day. And it just plays into that archaic notion of Darwinism that we know is no longer valid in any true sense. It erodes the natural compassion that we come to this earth experience with. And I feel like it just sets the stage for so much fear and anxiety and unworthiness and all those things that we see kids growing up with today that's so troublesome. I know there was that period not too long ago where participation trophies were like the thing. And then there was all that backlash and mocking of that concept. But I really feel like that's the direction we need to go in. And, sports just being one little example, but there's so much indoctrination that takes us away from that true being that we all are, that Dr. Hind was expressing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think there are some schooling systems in Scandinavia, maybe, where they don't have, they play the sport specifically just, at least for the younger kids, just for the joy of playing. And I mean, that manifests in so many different ways. You like not doing work to get, but like finding joy in the process. I think is a really important reframe for like how you live life in general. So yeah. Does anyone else want to? Jen?
So I think it's really interesting, Lisa, that you brought that up, because when I think of Elizabeth, going back to your question, like when did I first start to feel disempowered? And I love this question because I do a lot of work around like gremlin work and inner critic work with my clients, and it always goes back to childhood. And it's not the trauma. People have worked through the trauma. It's the other things that have slowly built up over time. And for me, it was being raised with a brother with learning disabilities and some other challenges. So I always felt less than. He always came first. My parents needed to give him extra attention. That's fine. I have worked through that. But Lisa, I just think it's really interesting because for me, as much as I felt disempowered in the home space and as much as I felt less than at home and all of that, I felt very empowered on the sports field. For me, softball was my saving grace. Sports were my saving grace. And yes, I was also very good at it, and that helped. But I think I needed to be good at it because I felt so less than at home. And that's why I love these discussions, to just get the different perspectives, because I think at the time, if I was on one of those teams where everyone gets a trophy, it would not have had the same impact on me, because at home, everyone was getting a trophy. And I needed that space where I could shine. So it's really interesting to think back about like what was disempowering, what helped me feel empowered, and then also taking that today and looking at like, how do we give kids those outlets and those safe spaces where they can step into their empowerment and feel like they're winning somewhere, because winning drives confidence. while also not putting others down. And I think what's interesting is, as much as I loved sports and I'm incredibly athletic and I was always on the winning teams and like went to the Little League World Series, did all the things, it was never about putting the losers down. It was just about building me up and wanting to be the best. And yes, that drove into my self-sabotaging behaviors later in life of being a hyperachiever. I acknowledge that as well. And I've since had to work through being a hyperachiever, which stemmed from that moment of disempowerment as a child and always being less than. But it's just, I love that you had brought up the sport, because I hadn't quite made the connection of like, why did I always lean into softball so much? And it's because I was so disempowered in the home space. And I know my mom is going to watch this recording. So Mom, I love you. You guys did your best. I know it always seems like I throw you under the bus. It is not true. It is just part of my perception and my experience. So if anyone else has family members listening, this is an example of what we were talking about earlier, talking about the messy middle, even when people involved in the messy middle are listening and you might hurt them. It's not the intention of hurting them. It is owning your power, which is, Maureen, something you said earlier. So calling it out there, because I know I'm going to get a text later being like, so, addressing it right here. Sabrina.
I love that this is coming up, because mine actually has to do with my dad, and I was going to give the same exact asterisk on mine. But I say the same thing, with my parents. I do feel sometimes as if, because I do share so much of my story on a line and on these platforms to teach, that sometimes I do feel as if I am probably hurting feelings of people who were in my life early on. And it's not my intention to do that. I'm always coming from a place of trying to teach. And I know, and I'm also very open with the fact that my son, although I, low key brag about being such an awesome single mom, I'm sure he's going to have his own traumas to unravel as he gets older, with the things that, the life or the journey that I chose has now given to him. And I'm aware of that. And I know that wrath is probably at some point going to happen, because I do teach the importance of communication. But I love this question as far as the earliest thought of being disempowered. And I'm having a tough time with this, because I can think of a lot, but a lot of them are based around religion, and I don't necessarily want to get into that. So the earliest one that I can think of, I was probably 12. And as everyone knows, my hair is super crazy and curly and obnoxious. And I remember we were getting ready to go to church, and I was ready. I had my cute dress, my cute shoes, my little purse, my Bible, and walking out the door with the family. We were always a very punctual family, which now I'm in time management organization as my niche for coaching. So there we go. But there was my dad looked at me and he said something to the effect of, "Are you going to leave the house with your hair looking like that?" And my hair was down and probably just wasn't appropriate, brushed or something like that. But I actually distinctly remember that I thought my hair looked great. And my dad insisted on me pulling it back into a bun, because the curls weren't, like 2 days or whatever, the curls start to get, not as pretty or defined looking. And so, but I remember feeling my power or my esteem or whatever you want to call that go from like here. Because when you get ready for church, like I looked pretty. Like I felt like I looked pretty. And he kind of like pulled that down.
Took you down a couple notches.
Yes. And I remember feeling this feeling of not feeling powerful with my hair. And my hair is a main thing. Like it's what anybody that I meet, no one ever tells me that I'm pretty. Everyone always says, "I love your hair." That's the only compliment I ever get. "I love your hair. Your hair is gorgeous." not that I'm upset about that, but feeling this feeling of not appreciating my hair and hating my hair, and a part of me that's so obvious and so big and so in your face is something to be ashamed of. And that had it had a lot to do with my voice. It had a lot to do with my confidence. It had a lot to do with the way that I walked and the little frizzies that would come out and how I viewed myself. And it's something so small that I'm sure he didn't intend to do, but it's little things like that that can really, hit you a little bit.
What's crazy is he might not even remember saying that.
Yes.
He probably doesn't.
Yes.
Like, it was a huge moment for you. And like, it was just off the cuff for him.
Yeah. And this, another podcast that I had was talking about micro traumas, and how a lot of times we go into adulthood and we start learning about traumas, and we're searching our past for these grandiose things that have happened in our life that have caused us to be the way we are. And sometimes they're not these grandiose things. Sometimes it's just these little tiny micro traumas that happen to us that create this kind of weight on our shoulders. And it's being able to clear those off of our plate is what, it allows us the opportunity to create a new canvas for ourselves going forward.
I think we're going to hear from Erica on this question.
I'm going to make it super quick. So earliest memory, mine would still be childhood. Like Sabrina, who's probably deeply rooted in religion, and I don't want to discuss that.
Yeah.
So I think really sometimes, and this might have been talked about, is we confuse power and control. And so then when we start talking about women empowerment, sometimes people think we're talking about women control, and there's two different things. Like, let's really start talking about what this language is. But when you're born a certain gender, I just think at some point it just starts happening. You start feeling disempowered, whether it's in the school system, whether it's how friends treated you, whether it's religion or society, or within your own family or yourself, or like, there's just this burden that kind of comes on top of you. So my earliest memory would probably have been in school, and the power dynamic of education, and being so, them not knowing things that we know now.
And Maureen?
I'm going to kind of loop what each of you guys said, because I love everything, every aspect of each of you. When Lisa talks about how sports can be, bad for self-confidence, and then Jen says, actually, it was my self-confidence. One thing that Jen said that I'm going to use, find where you shine. Find where you shine, which I love, because that's the place that you get empowered. And of course, we all had those things in childhood. I said things to my children that I had no idea probably were not good. So childhood, a lot of that stems from it. For me, the idea of a lot of this, we talk about disempowerment that's mental. For me, when I got into a marriage at 18 years old and he was physically abusive, that was my first moment of feeling disempowered. Was like, I could be as strong as I want in mind, but I am being physically withheld from something against my own will. And that started taking that toll of disempowerment. When we talk about the sports, Lisa, and I love how passionate you are about it. You're right. When it comes to our children and our youth, the idea is not to teach them to avoid something that lowers their self-esteem. It's teaching them how to cope with something that could lower their self-esteem. And so that was the one thing with a son with ADHD. He always felt at a disadvantage. He'd have an IEP in the 504 in school, and he always felt different. And I empowered him to say, you just have something different. You think so uniquely from everybody else, and you just work a little bit harder than everybody else. And it empowered him, and he stopped using that as a crutch going forward. And it built his self-esteem where he said, yeah, okay, I got to use some coping skills here, Mom. You're right. You're right. This isn't, I can't avoid this, but I can learn how I can empower myself with coping skills. So find where you shine. And you're right, those moments, I remember being in one of my multiple dysfunctional relationships and going to counseling by myself, and the counselor said to me, you talk like an 80-year-old woman, like your life is over. And that was that second moment of disempowerment when I went, oh my gosh. And that was, in my 40s. And I'm like, I had no idea I had that perspective of myself. I wasn't self-aware that I literally felt disempowered my entire life. And someone on the outside said, do you realize how you view yourself? So if I view myself that way, I don't feel empowered. And then I go out into the world and I portray this disempowerment. And then I allow people to treat me the way they're going to treat me. So great question. Great answers, everybody. Thank you so much. I love that question. Thanks for letting me answer that.
Dr. Hind hasn't answered this question yet. I wanted to give her a chance to answer.
Yes, thank you. I love the question. I love all the answers. And I love how each one's perspective is bringing more to the understanding of needing the balance between helping others who are disempowered and empowering yourself. And I think the best image I can give is about children, and how when they are raised in a family where the culture, the traditions makes them feel that they are obliged to help their siblings because their siblings are smaller than them. Their siblings need more attention. So they grew up with that heavy responsibility. And it's not just, feeling bad because they didn't get enough attention, so they feel they're not worthy. So that's not even the question. Is that they grew up feeling responsible for everyone, everything, feeling the savior to everyone, to everything. And they are lacking if they haven't done sports because their parents afforded it, or their parents were, educated enough or aware enough of the importance of doing activities. Where is that space where they felt they have the power, they have a role, they can be competitive, they can win something, they are worthy of winning something? And that's what we spend our life healing from. Either that responsibility because it's too heavy, it's like luggages we carry with us, or finding the space where they can feel they can be the best in it. And if that space they haven't discovered through sports, through art, through culture, through performance, through being the top of their class, to something, they will always be looking for it forever. And
I want to play devil's advocate a little bit between Dr. Hind and Lisa.
Yes.
Because there's some confusion popping up in my head. So I'm just speaking for the audience here. But if we're building a culture of, not if we are, if there is a culture of not putting so much pressure on winning, and then also be a winner, how does that go together? Elizabeth.
I think Maureen said this. Forgive me if I have the wrong credit, but someone just said, find what you love and you'll feel empowered.
Okay.
So,
but what if I really love softball and my team wins? What does that mean for everybody else who didn't win?
In like the education space and like in raising children, I heard this one statement I think in the US in particular, we tend to, if someone's struggling in a certain area, like if a kid is struggling in history, we get them a tutor for history. If someone's struggling in math, we get them a tutor for math.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense. Where are the children excelling? And get them specialized in that. And that way, when you are on the softball field, all of the kids playing softball are that intense. And they will take that loss as part of the path to winning. Instead of like, oh, this is just another thing that I have to do. It's part of the getting better.
But that's causing trauma, though.
No, it's not.
In children,
I don't think so.
That's what Lisa said. Lisa.
I think that I absolutely agree. Find where you shine, find where you're just in that flow, and that's what helps kids. I think the only reason I kind of pointed at sports is that, yes, our children are brought up to be far too competitive in their grades and their instrument playing in every aspect. But in general, to my mind, everything else, there doesn't have to be a loser. If I'm playing the clarinet, and yes, I'm going to be first string in but the whole orchestra wants to rise and be good. The school wants everyone's grades to come up. So sports to me is the only one where I'm just going to use wrestling as an example of like a one-on-one, that for me to go home feeling good, someone else has to go home feeling bad. It just seems to me that our culture is so obsessed with sports to the point that it's a $1 trillion industry when we're older, that we're just sort of putting an artificial construct around this winning and losing. And I mean, it can go into like, are we training them for combat thinking later in life? It just seems such an arbitrary thing that we put around this concept of whether for me to be good, someone else has to not be good. And it's true in so many areas of the way we raise our kids. So it's not like sports is the only one. It's just an easy one to point to because of the winner loser mentality. And so many like adult men still can't wait for Sunday to see if their team's going to win or if it's going to lose. It just seems to me like, does it really matter? It's not that higher consciousness oneness vibe that we really need to move toward. Like for everyone to understand that for any of us to win, we have to want all of us to win is going to be the thing that propels us forward.
Jen.
Like jumping out of my seat right now.
Go.
Jumping out of my seat right now.
It's your field.
Don't take away my softball. But just because somebody excels and finds what they do and like find the shine and be the best that they can be, why does that mean somebody else has to lose?
Right.
Yes, in sports,
Because
there
that's
are
right.
winners and there are losers. Yes, there are. It is up to the parents and the coaches to not add the emotion to it. It's just a thing. It's just a place to shine. And I think that's where my coaches did really, really well, because it was like we celebrated our successes, but we never pointed fingers at the other team to say they sucked. It was always, where did we shine? How can we get better? What can we learn? But it was never about losing and like making the losers feel bad. And when we did lose, we never left yeah, it hurt. Of course we wanted to win, but we never took a hit to our self-worth because of the way that our coaches raised us. So I think it is our job looking at the next generation, because we're all screwed up, because we all grew up in the generation where there are extreme winners and there are extreme losers. And yes, Lisa, to your point, in corporate, a lot of people still operate that way. So when you think about energy leadership, there's 7 levels of energy. I'm not going to go super in detail. If y'all want to learn about it, hit me up on Instagram. I'll talk to you about it. But level 2 of 7, so very low energy, is the win and lose. In order for me to win, you have to lose. And so many people think that that is the only way, where ultimately we can, at a higher level of energy, like a level 6 or 7, we all win. So in sport, you can have a team of winners, but the people, the losing team, they still showed up. And this is something that we're working on with our nephew right now, because he is on cross country and he loves running. He loves running. He is literally the worst one on the team. He crosses the finish line last every single race, and he keeps wanting to quit. And we're like, you don't have to win. You just have to enjoy it. And he does. And like, he'll still like, oh, like, it doesn't matter. So I think Sabrina, to your question, like, I think that's the connection, is it's disassociating the unpleasant emotion with losing while still letting people shine in the areas that make them feel empowered.
Okay. So I want to emphasize that it is our responsibility to not allow that feeling to fester.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what Maureen was saying earlier, is empowerment, power. Where is the power? Do we want to give the power to that feeling of losing? Yes or no? And if we don't want to give the power there, then don't. Choose to look at it as, I showed up. I did the best I could. And if this isn't my place to shine, and if this isn't where I feel empowered, then I'm not going to take a hit to my self-worth. Not everybody can be the best, but just because we're not the best doesn't mean we're not the best that we can be. So even in like orchestra, at least I love that example, like everybody rises up. Yeah, I still remember being an oboe player, being pissed that I wasn't first chair. So like, but then I took a step back. I'm like, it's not my passion. I don't care that I'm not the best. So I think something that we all have to do for ourselves is understand, where do we want the power? But also when we look at our children, understand we're going to F them up no matter what we do. Accept it. It will make your life as a parent so much easier. Just acknowledge that your kid, when they are in their 30s, are going to start talking about how you screwed up their life. Accept it now, own it. Don't overthink it. Do the best you can. But like, other than that, teach them to be empathetic. Teach them to win with grace. Teach them to win and still acknowledge all the things the other kids did well, while also giving them space to really own and shine and feel empowered. I'm obviously very passionate about this. I could like soapbox for days, but like, I really think that you can do both without, things just happen. We assign the emotion and the thought to it. So how do we change the narrative? And I think that's our space here, is on this panel, is to tell other people it's okay to change the narrative. And it's okay to challenge the norm that if you're on the losing team, you are a loser. No, you are just on the losing team. That does not make you a loser. Totally different. Disassociate that language.
I get that. Totally. Elizabeth.
I wanted to, like, all of us. Oh, I love it when I'm like about to bounce out of my seat. I kind of wanted to circle back and share one of my earliest memories that I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a disempowering moment. However, it just kind of, it's one of those things that like really irks me when I think about it. 5th grade, and we were learning about Vikings, and I'm half Norwegian. My father's name was Torvald. It means rule of Tor. And so we were in the class reading along, and it was my turn to read, and we were learning about the Norse gods. And, you know, of course, I said, I pronounced Tor the proper way, and my teacher corrected me, not once, not twice, but 3 times in 5th grade. And I just remember thinking, like, no, it's not Thor, it's Tor. Like, and I know this better than you. Why are you correcting, like, my father's name? This is my dad's name. Why are you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was just one of those, like, where it was like a hammer, like, no, 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 until I finally ceded. So that was one of those moments where I was like, ugh, I did not like the way that felt. Maybe contributed to spunkiness, where I was like, I'm not going to let anyone tell me how to pronounce a Viking name ever again. But that wraps into this whole thing about like schooling and grades. I think that like something that was tremendously not empowering for me was the fact that I was sort of raised to find my self-worth in my grades. And then also in the way that I achieved those grades, which was, I mean, we did not have block scheduling yet. We had every single subject every day. We had an hour of homework for every subject. And then on top of that, I had sports. Like, when did I sleep? No wonder I was running on adrenals. Like, that was my life from middle school through graduating. No wonder college was easy. And just, the note that I have right here is we are not our skill set. It doesn't matter if you're the winner or the loser. You can still be a shitty person. You can still not contribute to society. So it's like, I think not looking for the external validation, not teaching the next generation that like what they put up on the scoreboard or, you know, like, I don't know, it's the grades, it's the scoreboard, it's all of this stuff. That's not where you get your validation as a human, as a soul on this planet. And one of the first, I can't remember who was talking when this came to my head. I went to a Quaker school, and there's this saying called that is recited, there is that of God in everyone. And for the first time being in this panel, I heard back, that includes you, Ellie. There is that of God in everyone. And I've always taken that as like a, you know, because I'm looking for the good in everyone. And I don't want to judge, because I really don't know anybody's story. So that allows me to come from a very kind of like neutral space with a lot of people. But like, God is in me too.
That's
so
awesome.
There's that of God in everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
thank
Mike,
you.
back to you, Sabrina.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So we have 20 minutes left on this panel. We have 2 women left. So we're going to do 10 and 10. And then I'm going to do a quick sign off. Thank you so much for those of you that are still here. Thank you for those of you watching live, still hanging on with us. We have 76 individuals hanging out with us. We did get to a low of 30, and then we brought it back up to 99. We didn't quite hit 3 digits today. So that's okay. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. Those of you that are watching on the replay, make sure that you hashtag replay wherever you are so that we know that you were here and you were listening in. I'm going to hand the mic over to Erica.
Okay, let's try this again. It's a little bit quieter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Same for me. I think it's so interesting that we talk again. One of the things I was trying to communicate earlier, which I don't know if it came through, is we talk about words and interchange them too easily. And so when we have conversations, we assume that when you talk about empowerment or power, that we're talking about the same thing. And really, we're not. Really, we are not, because none of those words mean the same thing to each of us. It means something different. It really, really, really does. So when we talk about empowerment, for me, I'm thinking internally as a woman, how do I feel empowered to do and to stand firm in who I am and be comfortable and stand for myself. But in the job or in the workforce, empowerment means a completely different thing for me. And in my relationship, empowerment means completely different things. So even in the dynamic that we're in, those words change their meaning. And so I really think for me, and what my question was is, because a lot of the book that we wrote, But That's Not Me, talks about the language. It's so important for us to understand the language of what we're talking about and what those words mean, and then how they apply to this day and time instead of how they've applied in the past, because we can learn our lessons, but today is reality, right? So how has the word or the subject kind of changed for you as you've learned and developed as a woman? Because at 45 and the mom of 6 children, when you talk about women empowerment, it means way different thing to me now than it did when I was a child of the 70s, when it did when I was a teenager in the 80s, it did when I was graduating in the 90s, it did when I entered my career in the early 2000s, it did when I became a mom in the early 2000s. Like, it has changed over time. And so I was just curious, how has that word changed for you and what it means? Anyway, Lisa, take it.
Yeah, I think apropos to this panel, we I'm assuming we're roughly the same age-ish, all of us, that we came up at a time when, feminism was trying to tell us, okay, I'm old, but when feminism was trying to tell us that to be powerful meant to emulate the powerful people in the world who were all men. So I think that, I don't know if we all did, but I definitely came up thinking that power meant be louder, be more forceful, be more energetically outward. And I've come to learn in my adulthood that it's actually the opposite. It's being softer, more centered in my truth and who I am, that's such a more freeing, open sense of true power. So I think for me, the shift definitely was from a more masculine interpretation to a more feminine interpretation of power.
I love that answer, because masculine and feminine energy come into play when you're defining words, because each word has a masculine definition and a feminine definition, and most of the dictionary has been written in what tone? A masculine tone. So anyways, so Sabrina, I want to hear what you had to say.
Very similar to what Lisa said. I wrote it down before she even said it, but same. So, very masculine, harsh, strong, vibrations were coming out of me when I was trying to find my power or feel empowered. And there was also a time period for probably about a good 5 years where empowerment to me meant money, which is weird, because of the that was the answer that I needed in the situation that I was in. Because I had no money, I had no power. So I felt weak. I did not feel empowered mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, because of the lack of money. Soon after that is when it became my voice. So because I had no voice, because I couldn't speak, I felt disempowered. And it's definitely evolved. I love this question. And where I am now is very much what Lisa said. It is a lot more subtle, and it's more internal, and it's mindset. It's just how I'm thinking. So all of that extra has been kind of towed away, and the empowerment is just in the way that I view my life, in the way that I decide to speak, in the way that I ignore. That's it.
I love that. Because that's the truth, is like empower. I mean, it really is an internal thing. And so many times we are looking for an external validation of that this is what women empowerment looks like, or this is what it means to be a woman who is empowered. Like, however you're viewing, whether you're viewing it as a movement, society wise, or just ourselves, we look so much to that outward validation. So, Maureen.
I love that. And you jogged this thought in me the first half of my life when I wasn't self-aware and I wasn't at the point of understanding all the power that I had inside me, I saw empowerment as controlling. If I can control this, my household growing up, the louder you were, that was having the power. So I always saw it as this forceful, I can make people do things. That would be empowering because I had no power. I was always being overpowered physically, mentally, psychologically. And I love that Sabrina even said, and financially, on top of that, it's when you feel like we were talking balance, Dr. Henry, you always say, you've been saying throughout this, balance. When you have something that's out of whack, it's like with your health. You can feel really good, but then you've got one thing that's kind of out of whack. It makes you focus on that thing that's out of whack. And that first half of my life when I had no control over what I did, what I said, where I went, I longed for empowerment, but what I longed for was to be able to speak up, to be strong, to speak my truth, to be able to be authentic, to be able to be who I was, to not have to mold myself to what everybody wanted me to be. And empowerment now is not about control. Empowerment now is getting to decide and have choices. And I think for me, that's the difference in the beginning and the second half. And I think I am older than most of you. So next Saturday, 52, you whoop, whoop. So thank you. I definitely love this discussion. I love all of you guys. And it's new for me because I haven't had this mix yet. So now I have all these new connections. So thank you.
That's awesome.
I love your answer, Maureen. I just love the joy that you always bring, because we know because we've been on panels for a while. So underneath is a story of not joy, of not, bubbling, and many of us bring that to the panel. I saw even Sabrina, myself, Dr. Hindi, and Lisa and Elizabeth. I don't know your background, so I won't speak for you, but as a woman, I have found that empowerment has changed for me because I finally had choices.
Yeah.
And I surrounded myself with people who supported me having choices, because in abusive situations, you don't have choices. And so for the majority of my life, almost all my choices didn't feel like mine. And so I really do think that empowerment should be more a women's choice. So that's where empowerment comes from. And I think really the definition of empowerment is having the ability to choose.
Absolutely. That was beautiful.
100%. And when we have 100% the ability to choose without external sources, abuse, neglect, and the trauma behind, like we can just choose, that is what true empowerment means. And I think that's really all what we're seeking, whether it's in the workforce or in our relationships, is to just know that we have the safety and the ability to make our own choice and it to be respected. Because we're going to make mistakes and, that's going to happen. That's on us. But really, I really believe that that's the true definition. And if we start focusing on that definition, then who the fuck wouldn't support that? I mean, come on. You want to choose your life. I want to choose my life. Let's just go to that. It's not women, men. It's just the empowerment of choice, period.
Absolutely.
So, anyway.
Absolutely. Yes. That was great. I want to say end, but we're not quite at the end yet, but that was good. Thank you. And I love how you and Maureen brought that together so beautifully. That was fantastic. Maureen, we're closing up with you, girl.
Wonderful. I want to circle it back and maybe close it with this, because I think this is really where empowerment comes. I'm all about her version and Sabrina and building this community because I want a new view of womanhood and camaraderie among women. And the one thing I think stands in the way is competition. So I'm going to wrap it up where it came back from sports and all of that. I think let's talk about healthy and unhealthy views of competition, and how do you deal with women that want to compete rather than uplift with you? How do you navigate that person? Maybe put your arm around and bring them back to, I'm not competing with you, but I'm lifting you. We are rungs on a ladder. We are not stepping stones. Dr. Hind, you're so sweet. I didn't get to respond. Thank you.
Yes, you look good. I wrote it. Nobody knows, but you do look good. And happy birthday for next week.
Thank you. You all get a weekend here in America. You all get a 3-day weekend in honor of my birthday. You're welcome.
Wow, nice. That's exactly my field. How to get women out of competition. And that's how you create leaders. When you create women leaders, women leading their space, leading their expertise, leading thought leaders, you are completely away from competition, because you can't be a leader and compete. Just they don't go together. Amateur compete. Amateur look at the other one. They hit her. They don't like it. They're gonna make her feel bad. They're gonna talk bad things about the others, because that's amateur. But leaders, professionals, create, innovate. They are in a space where there is room for everyone. They come from a space of an energy of abundance. We are 7.5 billion people around the world. There is clients and space for everyone. And when you come from that energy, don't you feel relaxed? Don't you feel good?
Yeah.
Don't you feel this is the time of a new economy? You know, before the economy was based on the competition. That's why schools are based on the competition, because schools were created from industrials, preparing employees who are going to come from 8 to 5, and they're going to be doing the best work. So that's what people knew. Time have changed. The pandemic, the war, the problems. If you are in the mold of that management style from before, where you need to be following the process and having that manager who is telling you work well, you don't work well. So there is that competitive space and way of being. They don't lead themselves through changes. They don't know how to do it. And that's why a lot of economies found themselves, faced with problems. But when you come and you are a leader, you innovate, you bring new ideas, you are so busy creating,
Yep.
you don't have time to compete with the others. And
Exactly.
that's why I'd say to every woman, get busy giving value, get busy becoming so excellent in what you do. You have no time to compare yourself with the others and be mean with the other or compete with the other. Be busy becoming the best of who you are day after day. Lead through the value, through the humanness, through your true and profound love of serving, of helping, of guiding. Truly, when you really embody that, you are the leader. You are the great leader, because you have it all.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Getting away from the solo mentality to the team mentality is everything. Sabrina.
I just want to add to Dr. Hind. When I started building her version, I was just all about community. As you guys know, I'm all about community. Share your stuff. Talk about you. Talk about you. And I'm over here thinking that I'm like re-innovating the way that community is built within women. And I'm like, I'm going to do it different. And I'm going to praise everybody. And we're going to rise together. And then I met Dr. Hind.
Yes.
Yes. So Dr. Hind, way before, her version even existed. I don't even remember how I met Dr. Hind. However, at one point I entered into her community and she reached out to me and I said something on somebody's post and she goes, "Hey, write a separate post and post that on my wall." And I was like, "Wait, what? I thought I was the only one that allowed women to do that on my walls." So anyways, I posted it. It was like something talking about something I was doing, had nothing to do with her whatsoever. And I was just drawn to this woman who gets it, who just like gets it exactly what I thought I had invented on my own. She's already doing, and the community that she has and that she's building, and the fact that she really is for women, all women building together, which is exactly what this community that I'm building is set upon. Is we're not competing. The things that you're bringing to the table are different than the things that I'm bringing to my table. And do you have a right to be able to speak all of the things that you are doing? Yes, it's always yes. And Dr. Hind is carving that way for me to come right along behind her. So I so appreciated meeting you, and for you joining me here, and for understanding that my mission is very much like your mission. And this attests a lot to myself and Dr. Hind. We didn't see each other as competitive. We could have seen each other as, oh, she's doing something very similar to what I'm doing. But she's here on my panel and she's supporting me, and I'm constantly in her group supporting her. And we understand that there are billions of women all over this planet who need help and who need support. She's on one side of the world doing her thing. I'm on my side of the world doing my thing. And all of us together can lock and raise. And until we understand that, all of us understand that, it's going to be difficult. So it's trailblazers that are just getting it, and being the example of that are the women that are really going to. And that's what I'm really trying to create here within this community, is women who get it, women who are here on the panels and they understand that they have something to give, and they're here and they're showing up and they're speaking truth. So I so appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Yes, girl. Yes. Anybody else? We're closing up. Maureen, anything else?
I just want to add that if we stop seeing what others are doing as a subtraction from us and see it as an addition, that's where it will change. I have my own Facebook group. I have a life coach page. I have a personal page. And now when I'm out there getting quotes and I'm thinking of things to post, now I've added in her version. I literally sort through, this is a her version post. This is this, it's like, it's great. It's an addition. And I love that. You can, the benefit when you stop looking at things as a threat, and it's your self-esteem, really. It's your self-confidence. When you build that self-confidence, self-image, and self-esteem, you don't see anything as a competition. You see it as, oh my gosh, this is great. I can keep building this thing, 100. And I can add people, and you only win when you see it that way. And there's in life, the winning, the losing, the sports, the competition we talked about. We don't know winning without losing. We don't know failure without success, and so on. So we have to have the contrast, don't we? We have to have both sides of it. But when it comes to connecting with the right people, you'll know your people because they're not competing. They're lifting you. So that's my closing for you guys. Anyone else? Elizabeth, you want to add?
Erica did have something to say. Do you still have something to say, Erica?
Sure, I always have something to say. Are you
I
kidding
love
me?
it.
But I mean, like, seriously, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Yes.
I mean,
oh, girl.
Nelson
Yes.
Mandela. I mean, I think so many times, especially, I think we have probably all experienced it, where it's the I'm gonna crush you because I need to get on top. It's the power dynamic, right? It's so competition over community. It's power dynamic over power dynamic, personality clashes and stuff. And so many times we just want to lump it into one whole thing of competition. So really, we have to just look and say, wait a second, what's the dynamic here? Are they really competing against me? Are they even a competitor? Because gosh, I like having competitors compete against me. Come on, let's go. I want to both cross the finish line. I don't know about you, but I like running a race because this life is a race. Let's go, right? Let's run it together. So there can be some good things, but competition, especially with women and the way it's been portrayed, is one is climbing the ladder and the other one's stepping on that woman. And that is what we have been conditioned because it has happened to us. I know it's happened to me in the workforce. I'm assuming by some of the reactions on this panel, it has happened to them. And so even in our friendships, it's happened, maybe in it's happened in our family dynamic, right? So we're already bringing a lot of assumptions into what is really very on the external superficial, because we don't know the depth of that person. And then so we just lump it into an assumption that they're trying to compete with us, they're trying to crush us, and we put them in that she's that type of woman, and now you're part of the problem. So we are always, whether you're competing with other women or not, if you make an assumption about that woman, you are a part of that problem, even though you say competition over community. So stop saying these cliche things. And I'm not trying to wrap this up on a mean note at all. What I'm trying to say is we've got to watch what we're saying and what you're assuming, right? You're assuming she's trying to compete with you. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's trying to learn from you. Maybe she idolizes you. Maybe you're picking her up and you're thinking she's competing with you because you're in a similar field. What the fuck? Come on, people. We make too many assumptions about other people because we don't want to face the facts about ourselves. Be more concerned about you than you are about other people.
Yep.
And if you think they're competing against you, then you have the mental competition. You are thinking negative about that person, and now you've become just the instigator of the problem, right? So in this women community, we kind of talk about it. You really do not see men having this conversation. Go find it, please. Go find it.
That's so interesting.
Go fucking find where men are sitting and going, community over competition. They're not fucking talking about this. So why are we? Because women are catty. This is part of our personality. These are things about us. So just accept it, own it, and then stop assuming shit about people and move on.
That.
Like, just, I'm sorry. Like, do you see what I'm saying? And when we keep on coming back to these ridiculous conversations, we remove our own damn empowerment. And I just am like at that point where it's like, enough is enough. We are all competing in life against each other. That is the fact of the reality that has happened since the beginning of time. Like, that is a thing. Competition is a good thing. Disagreements are good. Things are good. Not everything is bad. Find the good in it and thrive on that.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
that's my 2 cents. Because I missed the whole 2 hours, I'm just going to let it all come out right now. Come and follow me along for that type of conversation.
I love it. I know some of you might have to jump off. So if you have to jump off, you can, but I want Elizabeth to be able to speak. So you don't have to stay on. If you can't, you can leave. But Elizabeth, you got the platform. We're still live.
Oh, Erica, you just like opened up something. Oh, God. Let me contain myself for this. So socially, women at a certain point in history were conditioned to point the finger at everyone else, or else they too would face exile or death. It has been programmed in us that she's got to drown for ourself to survive.
Is this like the Salem witch?
All of it. All of it.
I mean, all of it. That's one manifestation of it.
Thank you for bringing that up, because in history it just really is so true. Thank you.
It repeats itself over and over and over again. But yes, Salem witch trials, like Salem wasn't the only place that witch trials were happening. Malleus Maleficarum, literally, women are a force to be reckoned with when we are in tribe and in community with each other.
Yeah, I agree.
And the way that we get broken down is by pointing the finger. The way that we get broken down is by chopping everybody else off at the knees so that we can keep running. There is no world without us. Everyone came out of the legs of a woman. So I also wanted to add, sometimes Gary Vaynerchuk said, not everyone is meant to be an A player. And this goes back to that empowerment of choice. And I think that what is the most important is that, like, you're not losing. You're never going to lose if you're seeking your happiness. and I think I might be one of the youngest ones on the panel, born in 82. I was programmed to check all of the items off of a list. You know, it's like you get good grades, you go to college, you get the job, like you fill in the blank, you check off the boxes, but you never stop to freaking think about the items on the list or where the list actually came from. Who gave you that list?
Exactly. Yep.
And so there's a whole bunch of women my age who are like, well, now what? Like, I did all the things. Like, what now? And we're so disconnected that we don't even know how to find like the what next. Like, you know, if you could have it be any way that you wanted, if you could design your life to be any way that you wanted, maybe it is minimalist, living off grid somewhere. Maybe it is totally maximalist and taking private jets everywhere. What is it that lights you up? What are the choices that you want to make for your life? Let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes, without the external noise of expectation. What expectations can you shed? So that's...
Is maximalist a real thing, or did you just make that up on a whim?
I may have just made it up.
Hell yeah, girl. Hell
I mean,
yeah.
It
I'm all
sounds
about
pretty
making up words. I
valid.
make up words all the time. I love it. Sometimes
It
I'm
sounds-
writing my blogs and I'm like, I don't even know if that's a word, but it's a word now.
I mean, I want to live. I'm going for the maximalist. Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I so appreciate, for those of you that hung out with us way past the time, I so appreciate it. For those of you still watching live, thank you for being here and supporting the Her Version platform. This is great. This is great. I loved this one. Absolutely fantastic. These women, along with others, take the time every month to open up about parts of their lives in order to educate and inspire the world to think differently. If you resonated with any of these women, when they were on screen, there was a ticker bar going across the bottom of the screen. So any of the women that you resonated with, be sure to go back, check the ticker screen, and you can get their website off of there and connect with them. And I think most of them are on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. As always, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing in a platform that encourages people to share their truth and inspire others. As always,